The Zorvani Dominion had ruled the stars for thousands of years, stretching their reach across nearly every corner of the galaxy, conquering and absorbing civilizations until nothing dared oppose them. Their ships were living machines, dark and silent as they moved between systems, and their warriors were engineered for perfect obedience and perfect victory. No planet had resisted them in over 9 centuries. When the Dominion's Grand Council noticed a small, contacted world marked as Sol-3 on an old star map, barely a note in the archives, they assumed it would be just another resource sweep, another forgotten species to control. A small observation drone was sent, as was the custom, to measure signs of intelligent life and analyze technology levels. The drone entered the planet's orbit, scanned briefly, then transmitted a partial data burst before going dark. Static followed, then nothing. The council frowned, but did not worry. It had happened before dust storms, faulty equipment, local magnetic interference. So they dispatched a standard recon vessel with a small squad of enforcers to gather information in return. It too vanished without a signal. That was unusual. 2 ships gone. Still, it wasn't considered a threat, a mistake, maybe sabotage by some tribal resistance. So they sent 3 warships, armored and armed, machines of terror designed to end rebellions before they started. They expected silence upon arrival. What they received was chaos. The warships reached the edge of the Sol system, made their approach toward Earth and then vanished. Not in battle, not in retreat, but in complete and total disappearance. No wreckage, no beacons, just a final whisper of distorted audio picked up by a listening satellite near one of the moon's humanoid speech. Laughter and a chilling phrase decoded only partially. They're coming. This time, the council took notice. Not out of fear, they did not know fear, but out of confusion. The Zorvani had built empires on logic and pattern. Everything followed rules. Every rebellion followed a curve, a response, a conclusion. But this wasn't following anything they understood. Who were these humans? How could they strike without being seen? How did they destroy 3 warships without any known energy signature? Deep within the Dominion's archives, ancient logs were opened, dusty files from before the rise of their control. The planet had once sent primitive radio signals into space, images and sounds full of war, music, ambition, and stories. A strange, passionate species, loud, emotional, self-destructive, yet curious. The Dominion had dismissed them as dangerous to themselves, not to others. Now, the high strategists studied those old messages carefully. Was it possible they had evolved in secret? Built weapons in silence. Earth had been quiet for too long. And in that silence, something had changed. Now, ships were being recalled from the frontier. Data from nearby systems showed missing scouts, unexplained energy bursts, gravity anomalies. The patterns no longer made sense. And the most disturbing question was the one no one wanted to ask. What if Earth hadn't been waiting to be found? What if it had been preparing? Still, there was no panic. The Dominion did not panic. But deep inside the cold, black cities of their core world, for the first time in over 1,000 years, the Zorvani paused. One scientist noted something odd. Human technology wasn't advanced enough to cloak ships or generate mass destruction fields, and yet they had achieved the impossible. Were they using Dominion tech? Had they scavenged it, or worse, understood it? The high strategist issued new orders. Study Earth, monitor every signal, prepare a full fleet if necessary. But there was no need to act in fear. After all, Earth was just one planet, one species. The Dominion had crushed far worse. But still, a whisper of unease grew. What kind of species greets its first interstellar visitors? Not with awe, but with silence. A Kano world fights back without a message of peace or surrender. As more ships were sent hand, lost, the truth became harder to ignore. These humans were not afraid. They didn't run. They didn't negotiate. They simply erased every trace of the Dominion's presence with chilling efficiency. The High Strategists watched the stars over Earth grow darker on the galactic map, like ink spilling through parchment. Reports now used new language, disruption, unknown methods, non-linear combat, and, for the first time in recorded history, the Dominion's perfect algorithms couldn't predict the outcome of a conflict. The Zorvani weren't afraid yet, but something in the way the stars shifted. Something in that vanishing silence. Something in the laugh caught in the last transmission from Earth made even the oldest commanders hesitate. The Zorvani Dominion had always moved like shadows across the galaxy, quiet, cold, and unstoppable, but Sol 3 had become something different, something they could not simply erase. And now, the silence surrounding that strange blue world was making even the bravest among them uneasy. The High Strategists ordered a full assault fleet to be assembled. 200 ships with over 1 million soldiers, equipped with war drones, mind pulse cannons, and planetary siege engines that had crushed entire civilizations without a single landing. And as the massive armada folded space and approached the Sol system, expectations were high that Earth would fall like all others. But this time, as they crossed into human space, they found more than silence. They found resistance. At first, it was small, subtle, like space dust disturbing their sensors, with relay probes going offline, navigation charts glitching for seconds, and ships reporting momentary visual anomalies. And though nothing seemed serious, the commanding officers began to notice a pattern. They were being watched, tracked, and led, not by advanced alien tech, but by humans using small, unmarked satellites that kept reappearing, modified from primitive Earth machines and scattered like mines across space. And soon, the first wave reached orbit, expecting to drop into Earth's atmosphere and begin a precision strike, but they never made it. In less than an hour, 17 capital ships were disabled. Without direct contact, their systems fried by unexpected bursts of radiation from a floating debris field that turned out to be a disguised trap of old communication satellites and solar mirrors, their signals amplified to cook circuits and blind sensors. Smaller human ships, no larger than old-style shuttles, appeared among the chaos, darting through the Dominion fleet like insects, attaching magnetic bombs to holes and vanishing before targeting systems could lock on. And what confused the Dominion most was the nature of the attack. There was no central fleet, no visible command structure, just chaos that moved with a purpose, like the humans had trained for this very fight. Audio channels were jammed with strange signals, human laughter, music, even the sound of wind and ocean, and more than one Dominion pilot reported hearing whispers in their own language, calling them by name, even though no translation should have been possible. And then came the message broadcast on every Dominion frequency. "Come and see what Earth has prepared," spoken calmly in galactic common, by a voice not synthetic, not alien, but undeniably human. This message repeated only once, then everything went quiet again, to quiet, as if the planet itself were holding its breath. Zorvani had prepared for war, but they had not prepared for unpredictability, and this was something humans excelled at. Their movements had no clear pattern. Their weapons were cobbled together, but effective, and their soldiers barely armored, lightly equipped, fought with determination that ignored logic. And worse, when captured, they did not break, did not scream or beg. They smiled, said nothing, and sometimes even laughed, unnerving the guards who had never dealt with such behavior. Across the fleet, Dominion commanders argued this was not a normal rebellion, not even a prepared resistance. It was something else, something dangerous, something wild. In one recorded incident, a group of human engineers infiltrated a supply vessel, not to destroy it, but to replace its coolant with a fast expanding foam, forcing an emergency landing that took 3 cruisers out of the battle line simply because they collided with the falling wreck. Tisquisty was strategy that broke every rule the Dominion understood, and each time they adapted. Teve, the humans, changed their tactics again, faster than expected, as if learning with each move. Soon, commanders began referring to Earth as a reactive predator, something that waited, watched, and struck only when the moment was perfect. Worse still, the Dominion started receiving strange digital messages hidden inside their own systems, short bursts of text or images showing human children, forests, ancient ruins, and handwritten notes saying things like "we remember" and "we see you," which served no tactical purpose, yet deeply unsettled the troops, as if Earth was reminding them that it was not just a planet, it was a home, and one that would not fall easily. Confusion spread like a virus among the soldiers who had been trained for order, not uncertainty, and while the Zorvani still outnumbered the humans 1,000 to 1, they began to lose ships faster than expected, not to brute force, but to clever sabotage, misdirection, and something even more dangerous, hope. It was the first time in memory that a targeted world fought back with confidence, not because it was stronger, but because it believed it had nothing to lose. Even in orbit, the Dominion's massive siege cannons failed to fire properly, shut down by a burst of coded noise coming from a satellite that appeared to be a weather balloon. Small things, human things, were becoming weapons, and the Dominion's strength, once absolute, was being chipped away by creativity, boldness, and willpower. And still, Earth said nothing more, no threats, no demands, only silence. And that one invitation: come and see, as if it were not the humans who were afraid of war, but the ones who had called it upon them, on the edge of the Sol system, inside the shattered remains of the Dominion's once proud fleet. Silence drifted like smoke in space, broken only by the hum of broken systems and the distant static of dead transmissions. And within the wreckage of the Zorvani command cruiser, Veronic, a lone captain named Telrax, moved carefully through the bent corridors, stepping over scorched metal, past walls burned with strange marks. Some looked like human letters, others like scratches made on purpose. One phrase, smeared in dark paint across a panel near the engine room, read simply, "We learned by watching you." And Telrax didn't know whether it was a warning or a joke, but he felt uneasy, more than he had ever felt in battle. He had fought in over 200 campaigns, destroyed planets with one command, but nothing in his long service had prepared him for what Earth had become. They weren't just resisting, they were adapting faster than any species he had encountered. And worse, they were watching, always watching, learning from every mistake, changing faster than Dominion protocols could track. Even now, he wasn't sure how his ship had gone down. They hadn't detected a single human ship before the explosions began, systems failing one by one, like a disease spreading through circuits, and by the time the lights went red, it was already too late. Some said it was a virus, others thought it was sabotage. But Telrax suspected something deeper, a kind of warfare the Dominion had forgotten, or maybe never understood. Inside the data core room, he found more signs. Human-made devices wired into Dominion machines, hacked systems flashing foreign code, and in one corner, a small, outdated human camera pointed at the command chair, still blinking red as if recording everything. The humans hadn't just destroyed the ship, they had explored it, mapped it, and left behind a message, like hunters marking their territory. Telrax tried to access the ship's black box, hoping to understand what had happened. But the moment he connected, a sound burst from the speakers, not static, not an alarm, but the sound of human breathing, calm and steady, followed by soft, music-can old Earth tune he couldn't name. Something slow, with a piano, and then a voice, gentle but firm. speaking in perfect galactic common. You thought silence meant fear. It meant we were listening. The message ended, the music faded, and Telrax felt something strange in his chest. Not pain, not panic, but doubt, a feeling that had no place in the Dominion's strict mind training. Yet, it spread quickly, just like it had among the survivors of the first wave who now refused to go near Earth without backup. Elsewhere in the system, other damaged ships told the same story, systems hijacked from inside. Engines shut down mid-jump, automated turrets redirected to fire on their own carriers. And in every case, the humans left behind clues, like puzzles, for the Dominion to solve, as if daring them to understand how they had lost control. On one ship, a Command A, I found itself trapped in a loop of human video clips, images of forests, oceans, cities full of lights, people laughing, crying, fighting, and each loop ended with the same line. This is what we fight for, Dominion. Analysts reviewed these messages endlessly, trying to find a pattern. But no logic held them together. They weren't meant to be read like code, but felt like emotion, and that confused the analysts more than any encryption. Back on the core world of the Dominion, the high strategists reviewed the compiled reports and realized with growing concern that this war was no longer about resources or control. It was about something deeper, something the humans understood better than the Dominion ever could. He issued a new directive: capture a human alive, study them directly, find out what makes them dangerous. Within days, special retrieval units were sent to a human outpost on Mars, expecting light resistance, but they found none. The facility was empty, every machine stripped, every document gone. And in the center of the control room, a single helmet sat on a chair with a note attached: "You are late." No battle had taken place, no lives lost, but somehow it felt like a defeat. And when the Zoravani team returned to their ship, they found the cargo bay locked from the inside, their own supplies rearranged, their targeting computers wiped clean. Somehow, during the mission, the humans had entered their ship, taken what they needed, and left undetected. Fear began to creep through the ranks, quiet, unspoken, but real. For the first time, Sovani soldiers looked into the darkness of space and wondered if something was looking back. Commanders tried to maintain discipline, but every day brought strange report ships going missing between jumps. Strange symbols appearing on control panels, entire squads claiming to hear voices speaking human words in their dreams. It wasn't magic or mind control. It was pressure, psychological warfare, and the humans were masters of it. Earth was no longer just a planet. It had become a storm, a whisper, a presence that followed the Dominion wherever they went. Even allies of the Dominion's smaller empires, once eager to serve, began pulling back, refusing to send ships. Near Sol, claiming that humans were cursed, that their silence was a weapon in itself. The Dominion tried to counter with strength, sending larger fleets, heavier weapons, more drones, but each time, the humans responded with something unexpected. Not stronger, just smarter, faster, more precise. In one encounter, a single human vessel disabled 4 Dominion destroyers by forcing them into a gravity well created with their own tractor beams, a trick that shouldn't have worked, but did, because the humans had studied their enemies and turned their tools against them. On the outer moon of Titan, a Dominion research base monitoring Earth's radio traffic was found abandoned, not by force, but by fear. The staff simply left, leaving behind logs full of strange recordings, human voices speaking in perfect Dominion, dialects repeating names of the researchers and details no outsider should know. One log ended with the sound of a heartbeat, slowly fading into silence, and a final message: "We know where you sleep." By now, even the high strategists could no longer deny the truth. Earth was not losing this war, and the longer it went on, the more dangerous humans became. The Zorvani had always believed that silence meant surrender, that a lack of resistance meant victory, but Earth had shown them a new meaning. Silence was study, patience, and preparation. The humans had never stopped learning, and now the galaxy was beginning to listen too. Rebellions on distant worlds started to rise, inspired by Earth's defiance and encoded transmissions. Whispers spread. The humans fight for their home, and they are not afraid of giants. In the halls of the Dominion's capital, the ancient tapestries of conquest began to seem like lies. And in the quiet rooms where war had once been planned with ease, there was now only doubt and the echo of a silence that no longer meant peace, but something far more dangerous. The Dominion had fought for millennia, conquered thousands of worlds, and silenced countless species with their logic, power, and perfect strategy. But in the shadows of the Sol system, something was breaking. Inside their flawless design, something they couldn't measure with scanners or defeat with weapons, because this time, the enemy didn't just fight with guns or ships or numbers. They fought with something invisible, something unpredictable. And that something was the weapon the Dominion had never calculated: human will. It wasn't technology, it wasn't strength. It was the way humans refused to give up, the way they turned scrap into tools, fear into courage, silence into signal, and it was driving the Dominion mad. Deep in the orbit of Jupiter, the Dominion had built a black lava secret station where their best minds worked to break human patterns, to decode their plans, to find a weakness. But no matter how much data they gathered, no clear answer came. One Dominion analyst, a logical creature named Korvik, spent 90 cycles reviewing recordings from Earth, hoping to find signs of a master strategy or a central command. But all he found were pieces groups acting on their own, changing tactics, in real time, adapting like a living organism, yet completely decentralized. The Dominion's supercomputers called it chaos. But Korvik began to see something else in ETA design, built on trust, on shared defiance, like a pulse moving through billions of humans at once, each one thinking, acting, choosing, not because of orders, but because they believed in something stronger than fear. And that, he realized, was the true danger belief. Belief could not be erased, hacked, or crushed by force, and it made humans fight, even when they were outnumbered, even when they were bleeding, even when logic said they should run. In one recovered battle log, a human engineer disabled a full Dominion cruiser by crawling through a burning maintenance shaft with only a backpack and a homemade EMP. Knowing he wouldn't survive, but doing it anyway, just to give his friends a few more seconds to escape. And when the Dominion soldiers found his body, they also found a photograph, singed but intact, of the man with his family on a beach, smiling like nothing in the galaxy could break them. That image spread through the lower ranks like fire, not because it was terrifying, but because it was human. And that was more frightening than any weapon. They weren't just fighting soldiers, They were fighting people who had something to live for, something to protect, and something worth dying for. And that was a kind of power the Dominion had never faced before. Back on Earth, hidden deep in underground bunkers, human leaders watched the Dominion struggle, and they didn't cheer or boast. They just kept building, learning, sharing, knowing the war wasn't over and that every victory was only a pause in the storm. In one mountain base in the Andes, a teenager monitored Dominion signals while drawing sketches of alien ships on the wall beside her desk. When asked why, she simply said, "Because someone has to remember what they looked like when we made them run." Far above, human satellites, now armed and cloaked, orbited quietly, listening, waiting, learning faster with each pass. And their systems were not controlled by one mind, but by many, linked by trust and shared goals. Something the Dominion could never replicate. Even captured Dominion tech had been repurposed. Humans turned enemy drones into scouts, enemy shields into mobile cover, and even Dominion AI cores into tools that now answered to human voices. What made it worse for the Dominion was that every time they changed tactics, the humans were already ahead of the Maz if they had already imagined every possible move and prepared 5 answers to each one. Korvik finally snapped one cycle and recorded a message that leaked through the Dominion fleet. His voice, tired, almost broken, saying, "We are not losing to their weapons, we are losing to their reason to fight." Commanders tried to shut it down, called him defective, but the truth had already taken root. And even the soldiers who had never seen Earth now questioned whether it could be conquered at all. One young squad leader, barely past training, wrote in his personal log that he dreamed of Earth each night, not as a battlefield, but as a place full of music and fire and stories, and he didn't understand why they were trying to break it. Rumors spread that Earth was no longer defending itself, but preparing to strike back. And though no proof existed, the fear of that idea alone made entire sectors go quiet. And then something new happened in the edge of Dominion space. A ship appeared, not human, not Dominion, but something old, a relic from a forgotten time, carrying a message from a species the Dominion had destroyed long ago. And that message was simple: the humans gave us a voice again. No one knew how it was possible, but somehow Earth had reached across the stars and reignited sparks in the ashes of dead civilizations. And now whispers grew louder, small resistance groups, forgotten tribes, even former slaves of the Dominion, all saying the same thing: we are not alone anymore. Earth had become a symbol, not just a place, but a reminder that giants could bleed, and that if you stood long enough, even the strongest wall would fall. So, the Dominion tried to respond with fear, sent their largest fleet to block the path too. But it didn't stop. The Flawed only made the symbol stronger. In the silence between battles, Dominion scouts began finding strange artifacts drifting through space books sealed in glass, paintings, recordings of human voices telling stories, like singing songs, reading poems, nothing logical, but everything powerful. These were not weapons of war, but of memory, of meaning, and they were meant to remind the galaxy that Earth was more than a planet. It was a promise. And the deeper the Dominion looked, the more they realized they had no defense against it, because they could destroy bodies, yes, but not the will behind them, and every human they killed became part of that story, part of that flame that refused to go out. The war was still raging, ships still burning, but under it all, something had shifted. And everyone could feel it, even those who refused to admit it. The Dominion had prepared for weapons, for armies, for fleets, but not for belief, not for sacrifice, not for stubborn hope, dressed in worn-out boots and homemade armor. And as more stars began to flicker with rebellion, the High Strategist sat alone in his chamber, staring at a piece of paper delivered by a disguised Strana, simple drawing of Earth, circled in red, with the words, "We're still here." And for the first time in his long, calculated life, he understood what true power looked like, and why the silence of soul had never meant surrender. It had meant patience and preparation, and now it meant victory, waiting to be claimed. In the cold dark of space, fear had never been a real enemy to the Dominion. They had crushed fear with numbers, erased it with power, silenced it with control, but now, after everything that had happened near Sol, fear had slipped through the cracks of their perfect systems, and it moved fast, like smoke through broken halls. It's like fire through dry leaves, spreading from ship to ship, world to world, soldier to soldier. And the more they tried to deny it, the more it grew. It wasn't loud at first, just a whisper in the lower ranks, a question spoken too softly to trace. What if the humans can't be beaten? But that question dug deep, and soon it turned into hesitation, hesitation into mistakes, and mistakes into disaster. In the Gamma 7 sector, A Dominion patrol abandoned their post without orders after picking up strange human signals of music mixed with old Earth voices, like children singing a nursery rhyme in the dark, followed by static, and then a single word repeated: run. No ships had been seen, no weapons fired, yet the whole station went dark within an hour, and when reinforcements arrived, they found the command room empty except for a wall covered in human writing. Every line was different, every phrase like a memory or a warning, but one line stood out in red ink. It's not the fire you see that burns you, it's the spark you ignored. Reports like this multiplied. Strange disappearances. Whole units lost without a trace. Dominion tech corrupted by strange pulses that carried no signature. And still, the humans were barely seen. They attacked like ghosts, but each attack left a scar, not just on metal, but on minds. In secret rooms, far from the front lines, Dominion officers spoke in quiet tones, asking questions they were not supposed to ask. Why hadn't they won yet? Why didn't Earth fall? Why did the humans always seem to know what was coming? None of them liked the answers. It became worse when ships started turning back before reaching Earth. Not from battle damage, but because their crews refused to go further. Even veteran commanders, proud and decorated, showed signs of unease, claimed they heard voices in their dreams. Others reported human faces in security footage where no humans should be, and others simply stared into space, saying things like they're already inside without ever explaining what they meant. The Dominion blamed it on human tricks, psychological games, but deep down, they knew it was more it was something they hadn't trained for, couldn't predict, couldn't erase. In one sector, a Dominion ship received a transmission from a human child. Just a simple voice saying, "Please don't hurt my planet," and that voice echoed through the bridge, bouncing off the steel walls like a heartbeat, and none of the crew could bring themselves to fire when they reached orbit, not after hearing that voice. In another case, a Dominion fleet tried to strike a moon base near Saturn, but their own targeting systems failed not from damage, but from a virus hidden inside their command software, placed there months ago during a false retreat, and that virus simply replaced every tactical map with a single image, Earth seen from space, small, blue, and fragile, with the words still standing flashing in the corner. Back on the Dominion homeworld, protests started quietly, first among civilians, then among lower officers, saying that the war was cursed, that Earth was not meant to be taken, that it had become a living symbol of resistance. Statues of ancient conquests were defaced, and in back alleys, secret groups began painting the human word hope in glowing ink. As if, even in the heart of the Dominion, fire had started to catch. The high strategist grew more paranoid by the day, issuing harsher orders, purging officers he didn't trust, ordering planets to send more troops to the front, but every action only made the fear grow stronger, like he was feeding it with his own desperation. And then, something changed. The humans stopped hiding. For the first time, they sent a message across open channels, a broadcast that reached every Dominion ship, every station, every listening ear. And it was not a threat, not a demand, but a voice, come, steady, human, saying, "We don't want to rule you, we just want to be left alone. But if you keep coming, we will show you how far we'll go to protect what's ours." And with that message came a wave of information files, images, battle plans, all Dominion, all stolen, showing every weakness, every lie, every secret strategy, as if the humans had been watching from the beginning and waiting for the right moment to reveal their hand. The Dominion called it an attack, but it wasn't. No ships fired, no bases burned, yet thousands of soldiers deserted the same week. Whole fleets dropped their weapons, and civilian unrest turned into open rebellion. Some even began copying human tactics, forming independent resistance groups, striking against their own commanders. Earth had lit a match in the heart of a machine that had never known fear, and now it burned from the inside. Far above Earth, in the silence of orbit, human satellites watched it all unfold, not with hate, but with determination, 'cause they knew the war wasn't over yet, and the next strike would come, bigger than before. But they were ready. In bunkers and stations and hidden outposts, humans trained harder than ever, not for conquest, but for survival. Knowing that their greatest weapon wasn't a ship or a gunnet, was the fear now growing inside their enemy, a fear they hadn't forced, but it simply revealed. And as the Dominion scrambled to contain the collapse, Earth sent one final signal, not in words, but in an old Earth melody soft, steady, defiant, a song once played during dark days in human history. Now floating through the stars as a reminder, the fire had started, and fear was its fuel. The end did not come with fire from the sky or a final great battle, as the Dominion had imagined. Instead, it came like a slow, cracking sound in a quiet room. When something massive finally breaks under the weight it could no longer carry. The Dominion had ruled for so long that they forgot what it meant to bleed, but now the cracks showed everywhere on their ships, their systems, their people, and still they kept marching toward Earth, desperate to prove they were still giants, still the masters of all they saw. Even as their fleets grew thinner, their soldiers more afraid, their leaders unsure if victory was even possible anymore. Earth, small and stubborn, had not just held them off, it had changed the rules of war, turned survival into strength, turned belief into a weapon, and now the galaxy watched, silent and breathless, to see what would happen when giants fell. In the deep void between stars, the Dominion's largest dreadnought, the Seraphon, moved toward Sol like a black mountain in motion, crewed by tens of thousands, carrying the last hopes of a crumbling empire. But even it was not immune to the fear. Strange messages kept appearing on its screens, music from Earth's past, pictures of children, voices whispering in every language the same idea: you don't have to do this. And some crew listened. Some tried to leave, others vanished, and still the ship pushed on, slower than it should have, weighed down not by gravity, but by doubt. In the silence of space near Mars, the last major Dominion fleet formed up, expecting resistance, bracing for an ambush. But no attack came, only silence, and the quiet blinking of human satellites that seemed to watch with patience rather than fear. Then a single human ship broke formation from Earth's side, unarmed, flying slowly, broadcasting nothing but an old Earth song that spoke of standing when others followed. Was not a challenge, not a trick, just a message: we are not afraid of you anymore. For a moment, the Dominion ships held their positions, unsure, waiting for orders that came too late. Because inside the command network, chaos had begun. Human code, planted long ago, now unraveled the Dominion's control, opened their secrets, and locked out their weapons, turning their greatest machines into silent statues. One by one, Dominion captains screamed into their coms, demanding explanations, but none came. Because the truth was simple: the giants were no longer in control. Back on their homeworld, the high strategist stood in the great hall of war, staring at a screen that showed every world that had stopped sending reports, every fleet that had gone dark, every soldier who no longer answered. And for the first time in his life, he felt small, like the humans must have felt when the Dominion first came to their world. But unlike the humans, he did not have the will to fight back. In Earth's orbit, resistance fighters who had once been miners, farmers, teachers, and students stood on warships made from scrap and memory, watching as the Dominion ships froze, powerless not from damage, but from the knowledge that they had already lost. On the moon, a human girl whose brother had died in the first wave of the war lit a small flame and placed it under a monument built from melted enemy metal, whispering, "This is for all of us who never gave up." Titan, a former dominion slave, launched a message to his homeworld, telling his people they were free now, that the giants were gone, and they could stand on their own again. Across the galaxy, one by one, systems broke free, not with war, but with choice, because the fall of giants was not just the collapse of ships and weapons, it was the fall of fear, and once fear died, the rest followed quickly. In the days that followed, Earth sent no demands, made no conquests, simply offered peace, protection, and shared stories of how it had survived, so that others might learn, might rise, and never fall the same way again. The Seraphon, once the symbol of the Dominion's might, was towed into orbit above Earth, its crew silent, its weapons cold, and beside it floated a human station with bright lights and painted words that read, "Welcome to the new beginning." The high strategist was never found. Some say he vanished into the stars. Others say he took his own life in silence. But in the end, it did not matter, because the age of the Dominion was over, and its fall had left a space wide enough for hope to grow. Earth had not just defended itself, but had inspired a galaxy, had shown that even the smallest light can outlast the longest darkness, and that sometimes, when giants fall, it is not with thunder, but with a quiet, final step into the dust, where something new can begin. And so, in the year the stars changed, when silence replaced war and fire turned into peace, the people of Earth looked up, not with fear, but with pride, not for what they had destroyed, but for what they had protected. Their home, their story, and the right to never bow again